Guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with UIKit tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at the UISplitViewController in UIKit. So let's start by talking about what exactly is a UISplitViewController. So the UISplitViewController is a type of view controller that allows you to have a multi-column layout in iOS and iPadOS, as well as Mac Catalyst apps. Now, in a split view controller, there can be up to 3 different columns. The first column is always the primary column. The last column is always the secondary column. And in 3-column layouts, the middle column, or the second column, is the supplementary column. In a split view controller, any action taken in one column is meant to affect the appearance or data displayed in the next controller in the split view controller. Now, the behavior is different if what you're doing is on the final column, in which case any action that's taken in the final column that you need to do any navigation for or anything like that should be performed inside of that column. Right? So, with that being said, what are other things that you might need to know about a UI split view controller? Well, for one, when we have a UI split view controller, by default, it will allow you to collapse the primary column at like a sidebar, which is extremely nice. So if you want, so you can easily implement sidebars with this split view controller. And that's really just about it for the need to know details about how a split view controller actually works. Now let's turn to how do we implement it. Well, the first thing that you're going to need, the most fundamental thing, is you're going to need view controllers for each column. So if you want a 3-column layout, you're going to need 3 view controllers. If you want 2 columns, you're going to need 2 view controllers. Now, I'm going to show you how to use 2 columns in this video, but it's easy enough to go out and use 3 columns instead of 2. There are many other things that a split view controller can do, but those are a little bit more in the weeds than for an introductory video such as this. So I will leave it to you to read the documentation and experiment with those things. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have from the beginning and what we're working with. So right now I have my app running in Mac Catalyst mode, where we have an app that has 3 buttons: a red button, a green button, and a blue button. Each of these buttons are meant to change the background color of our secondary column, of our secondary view controller. Now, if this was a 3-column layout, these would need to change the background color of the supplementary column. But because we're going to be working with a 2-column layout, it'll be the secondary column. All right. So let's go ahead then and go into Xcode. And in our scene delegate, we need to actually create our split view controller. So where we are defining objects for our view controllers, excuse me, we need to say let SVC equals UISplitViewController, and each UISplitViewController object from iOS 14 onward needs to include a style. At least if you're using the newer iOS 14 and up APIs, which we will be using. So we'll say style, and we want a double column layout. You can also choose a triple column layout. And then there is an unspecified. Unspecified is for the APIs before iOS 14. Now, before iOS 14, you could only have 2 columns in a split view controller. So if you don't need any of the newer APIs, then unspecified is fine. But we're going to use iOS 14 and above, so we're gonna use the column-based APIs here. And I'm gonna say double column. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set which view controller is for which column. So we'll say svc.set view controller, and then we'll have the first parameter is going to be the controller that we're going to set for a column. In this case, main screen is going to be our primary, and then for dot primary. All right, and then we're going to say svc.set view controller, and then we'll pass it secondary for dot secondary, like that. Perfect. Now we're almost done setting up our split view controller. The last thing that we need to do is we need to set up our split view controller as our main root view. My goodness, excuse me. We're going to set our split view controller as our Windows root view controller. So you can see I have main screen here. But we don't want main screen. What we want is SVC. Let's save this, run the app now. And when it loads up, you can see our application looks slightly different in that the buttons are no longer as wide. They no longer reach the entire width of our application. They only reach the width of the column that it's in. In this case, it is the first column. You can see also up above in the toolbar of our app, we have a button that is specifically for collapsing the primary column, like I mentioned before. So we can tap this hide sidebar button, and the primary controller goes away. We press it again, and it shows up again. So it's really neat that you don't have to do that. Yourself. All right. So now all we need to do is we need to write the code for our buttons to affect the background color, in this case, of our secondary controller. And that will be done in the main screen. So I'm going to go to main screen, jump to definition, and we'll go all the way down here. All right. And so here I have all of my action methods, rather. And inside of this first one, where we need first our split view controller property of our view controller. Now, split view controller, that property is an optional UI split view controller because a view controller might not even be within a split view controller. Just like navigation controller is also optional because a view controller might not even be enclosed within a UI navigation controller. So we need to safely unwrap that split view controller property. And we're going to do that with a guard statement. But in addition, we also need to retrieve the view controller for our secondary column. And the method that we're going to use is named view controller, and then has one parameter where we specify the column. But that also is optional because the column we specify might not even have a view controller assigned to it. So we're going to safely unwrap that with the same guard statement. And we can do that by saying guard let split view controller equals self.splitViewController, comma, let view controller equals split view controller dot view controller for dot secondary, else return. So what this is doing is it's saying, okay, make sure that the split view controller property is not nil and can be assigned to split view controller. If that is not possible, if self.splitViewController is nil, then return. We can't do anything. And then if that succeeds, it will go down to the next statement it needs to execute in the guard clause, which is making sure that the view controller method of our split view controller, which at that point has been safely unwrapped, is not nil and can be assigned to our constant view controller. If it can't and it's nil, then again we return because we can't do anything. All right. So after that guard statement, we can safely affect the background color of our secondary column, or our secondary view controller, by saying view controller dot layer or dot view dot layer dot background color equals UI color dot system red dot CG color. All right. So if we run this code now, we can confirm that this works. We have a successful build. Here we are in our application. Let's tap this turn secondary red button. And it works precisely how we expected it to. And so with that confirmation, we can continue on. So when we have our green button tapped, we want guard let UISplitViewController equals self.splitViewController. And then after we've confirmed that that is not nil, we want let view controller equals split view controller dot view controller for dot secondary. Otherwise, if none of these aren't nil, then we will return like that. And then we can safely say view controller dot view dot layer dot background color equals UI color dot system blue dot CG color. We can save this, run the application again. Okay, so it does work, but we're using the wrong color here. That's fine, it happens. We can say green, system green, run it again. Like that. And now it's green. Okay. And then finally, we can do our blue button action method. So we'll say guard let split view controller equals self dot split view controller let view controller equals split view controller dot view controller for dot secondary else return like that. And then we'll say view controller dot view dot layer dot background color equals UI color dot system blue dot CG color. Save, run. We get a successful build. Turn secondary blue, tap it, and there we go. Our secondary controller is now blue. All right. So that pretty much does it for this video, guys, on UISplitViewController. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we will see you all in the next video.